One of the interesting things about doing this show, you never know who's going to call. Tommy Robinson, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Hi. No, it's interesting because we were going to invite you on the programme anyway at some point over the next weeks to sort of debate these kind of issues, not knowing that obviously what has happened today and all the rest of it. But we've sort of moved this hour into the issue of well, I guess, where Islam sits within the bigger picture of this. Many Muslims countering the idea that this is carried out in the name of Islam and offended by it. And, of course, you come into this debate because founder of the EDL, no longer with the EDL, but you're doing other things now. I guess, it's reasonable to say you are sort of very much, you live in the middle of this debate, Tommy.
I do. I was born in the middle of the debate. I was born in Luton, and it's epic of growing up there. But if you look at the Quran, that's all you have to do. I've been called a racist. That man who casually called you a casual racist, I've been called and shouted down as a racist for 6 years, for simply telling the truth, for simply pointing out facts about Islam. That's all I've done, is point out facts and tell the truth about Islam and tell the threat it poses. For example, you pick up the Quran, there are over 100 verses that incite terror and violence against non-Muslims. Over 100. It says 14 times that Muslims can take non-Muslim women as sexual slaves. These sort of things cause problems. And I think non-Muslims, wherever you find them, take them captive, harass them, lie in wait and ambush them using every stratagem of war. These sort of quotes, that's Surah 9:5, these sort of things inspire terrorism.
So why would, I mean, just on that point, Tommy, I mean, I'll let you talk uninterrupted, but I just want to, just to clarify, if I had a Muslim on the phone right now, they would clearly say you're bonkers, and that's not true. It might be in there, but the literal interpretation of it, just like the Bible, I know you've heard all these arguments before, but just like the Bible, you don't interpret them literally, they are there for different reasons. How do we square that?
If you try to live as the Prophet Muhammad did, look, people, it's free now. We use this word Islamist. Everyone from our prime ministers and everyone will say we're against Islamists and Islamists are evil. The Prophet Muhammad was an Islamist. He enforced Islam. He spread it with fear and terror. He actually, a quote from Muhammad, "I have been made victorious with terror." Okay, he's not a man of peace. This man that all Muslims hold up as the moral compass, this man murdered. He raped. He pillaged. That's why we have a problem. And of course, the majority of Muslims don't take it literal. The majority of Muslims don't pick up the Quran. The majority of Muslims don't go to the mosque. The majority. When you have an extreme literal interpretation, we have a huge problem. And you have the other gentleman who's ringing up saying we need to work with Muslims and we need them to tell us and inform on other Muslims. He's living in dream world. It's not going to happen. We've just seen the terrorists, the most wanted terrorist in the world from the Paris attacks, has been strolling around his home neighbourhood for 4 months. Yeah. And quotes from Muslims who are living there saying everyone knew he was here. Everyone knew he was here. So, and the prevent strategy, I mean, this was going back a few years. There's £360 million given to the Muslim community for prevent, which was supposed to be for mosques to inform on radicals and extremists. For an example, there's a mosque in Luton that received money for this. And the Stockholm bomber, the man who went and blew himself up in Stockholm, went to this mosque. Yeah? Now, after he blew himself up, the mosque imam came out and said, we challenged him on his radical views. You challenged him, but you didn't report him through Prevent, which you've been getting tens of thousands of pounds to do. Yeah? So Muslims do not tell on Muslims. Again, that's backed up by scripture, because they'll be siding with the non-Muslims.
So you think that's what was happening in Belgium with this man who was mooshing around since November as the world's most wanted man within his own community?
World's most wanted man, but we've seen when the police went in and arrested him, the youth come out and attack him. The youth come out and attack the press.
Watching this video,
an acceptance, and I'm not going to say it's all Muslims, because it's not, and I'm sure many Muslims are disgusted with what's happened in Belgium, but to say it's got nothing to do with Islam is a complete facade.
So okay, Tommy Robinson, let's just to clarify this. Your contention is that you acknowledge that most Muslims do not support attacks such as London, Paris, New York, Brussels.
Of course, yeah, of course, the majority, of course, every sane-minded person, but the ideology in the scripture that is driving this problem, the jihad that we're experiencing. And this isn't going to end, and it's only going to get worse. Once we accept that reality, we have to start doing something to combat it and stop it. We see the growing problem of Islamisation across Europe. We see millions now coming through our borders. It's not going to stop. And I speak out of passion and fear of what lays ahead for our countries and for my 3 children as they grow up. I want them to experience proper freedom, not live in fear all the time like everyone is now because of what's happening.
So many, and again, you've heard all of these arguments, Tommy. But many suggest you create that fear, and you did with the EDL, Pegida, which is the new kind of or British chapter, if you like, of the German-based organisation. That you're doing it again. You're actually scaring people. You're whipping up racial hatred, whether you acknowledge it or not. What is your response to that?
I'm honest, and I tell the truth. And the truth has become hate speech somehow. We're shouted down for telling the truth. But people may not like hearing it, but it's still the truth. All the things I say, like everything I've said in this conversation, I'm not even giving my opinion. I'm talking about facts. Facts about Muhammad, facts about Islam, facts about what's in the Quran.
Well, talking of Muhammad, a different Muhammad, a caller from Woking, he wants to put a point to you, Tommy, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Muhammad, good evening. What are your thoughts?
Good evening there. I was just listening to this and I just felt compelled to ring in because I heard something along the lines of that the Prophet Muhammad spread Islam by invading other countries and basically by using terror. I'd just like to enforce Islam by...
I quoted Muhammad. That's a quote from Muhammad. I've been made victorious through terror.
No, I don't understand what you've just said.
You don't understand it. The Prophet Muhammad said, I've been made victorious through terror.
I've been made victorious through terror?
Yeah, through terror.
And can you quote
if we go to if we're on the topic of the Prophet Muhammad, then certain scriptures, if you the biography of Muhammad by Ibn Ishaq, I picked up that biography to find out what I could about the man who founded Islam. When I picked that up, I read about him torturing a man called Kinana. He tortured him for his gold, set fire to his chest, tortured him for his gold, and then so I don't understand what logic Muslims can have to talk out about this. That's what he did, and then there was a Jewish tribe who surrendered themselves, 600 of them, and he pulled the pants down and seen who had started puberty, and anyone who started puberty was killed. And then he took the leader of that Jewish tribe's wife, Sophia, that night, and he married her. Well, which, quote, married her, basically raped her that night. Now, when I read that, I'm disgusted. And that's not me, that's in Islamic scripture. So, and the more I read, the more concerned I've become, the more dedicated I've become, because we face huge problems. And the reason why I quote, when he pulled the pants down to see if they'd started puberty, the Peshawar school attacks in Pakistan by the Taliban, that's what they did. That's what Muslims did when they done the Beslan massacre, to see if they'd started puberty. And they'd done that because that's what Muhammad did.
Mohammed, how do you respond to what Tommy is saying here?
I very respectfully disagree. I don't know where Tommy might have read that, because...
I just told you, Ibn Ishaq is one of the most renowned biographies of Muhammad. Written by Ibn Ishaq. That is one of the most fundamental core biographies of your prophet. And it's across the Islamic world. It's the main doctrine for his life.
Yeah, I'm not denying that. Just because someone's written a book and that's been written about the prophet, it doesn't necessarily mean that's true, because I'm a Muslim.
So you pick and choose the good bits of what Muhammad did, do you?
Well, no, I just want to make one point. I'm a Muslim, and I've been a Muslim all my life, and I live in the UK, and I think I enjoy life as a Muslim in the UK more than I did from where I come from. So, but this is the point that I want to make. Prophet Muhammad, the story that I've been reading about Prophet Muhammad was completely not in line with what you've just said. You know, the stories that I've read are of each.
Okay, so Mohammed, is the interpretation, I'll put this back to Tommy in a second, is it about the interpretation of the Quran? Is that, or the life of Muhammad? What is the issue here? Is it open to interpretation, or is there just a one-dimensional way of reading Quranic verse?
Yeah, if it's a biography, well, it depends on who's written the biography.
What about the Quran itself? Tommy was quoting some lines from the Quran. How do you respond to that? The unsavoury ones.
Absolutely. So the Quran itself is written in what is known as classical Arabic. Now, I can read Arabic, and I would have to, just to understand one phrase, spend about 5-10 minutes going into the history of that phrase, in what context that phrase has been used.
All right, so Tommy, you've got it slightly wrong because you haven't spent enough time studying Arabic, and you need to do that in order to understand the context.
In the Quran it says you can take outside your 4 wives whatever your right arm possesses, the arm of the sword, which is the sexual slavery. This is what Boko Haram, this is what ISIS all publicly tell us. This is why we're taking Yazidi women as sexual slaves, because Allah has commanded us to do so. Yeah, that's in there. So when you get a verse like that, that's a problem. Because Prophet Muhammad legalised and said it's okay to take non-Muslim women as sexual slaves.
Mohammed, what do you say to that? Do you think it's okay to take non-Muslim women as sexual slaves?
Sorry, say that again.
Do you think it's okay as a Muslim to take non-Muslim women as sexual slaves?
Well, I don't think it's okay to take any woman as a sexual.
Okay, so
no, but your prophet did. But your prophet, that's the problem. Your prophet.
Well, no, you're again. Sorry, can I just make the point?
Yeah, go on.
That is being blown out of context. I just find it surprising that you want to believe what Boko Haram are talking about Islam and what they say, and the actions that they do. You find that as representation of Islam, but here I am.
No, I don't find that as representation. No, yeah. When I pick up the Quran and I read a verse and I see a whole town with 1,400 young girls have been taken as sexual slaves in my own country, when my cousin was taken as a sexual slave and groomed, and then I pick up a book and I see 14 times that it says clearly, it's not down to interpretation, it says clearly, outside of your 4 wives, you can take whatever your right arm possesses, i.e. slaves. So in what context is that? Because the Prophet Muhammad took slaves.
So, Mohammed, just a final point from you. What context do you think that is? And I appreciate you're not, the onus isn't fully on you to interpret every aspect of the book, but you happen to be in the conversation here. What are your thoughts?
I'm just going to conclude by saying this. Boko Haram abducting 1,400 Muslims represent a minuscule percentage of Muslims all over the world.
But Tommy's point is that they are carrying out the kind of things that the Quran gives the green light to. How do you respond to that?
They're not, because they are taking what is in the Quran and in the most extremist sense, out of context.
All right, listen, Mohammed, I have to stop you there, just because we hit the clock. Tommy Robinson, thank you, sir, as well. I think we're going to have Tommy in the studio at some point in a few weeks' time to maybe take comments and continue debates such as this, and of course, in the interest of balance. Naturally, Tommy's views will be countered and argued against in equally robust fashion. But he is certainly a figure that has elevated a certain aspect of this debate into the public arena, whichever way you want to take it, whether you agree or ferociously disagree. He does have a view that some clearly believe is that of the truth. Others, of course, refute wholeheartedly that it's anything but. I'm sure we'll invite him in very soon here on LBC.